If you lift a bit the camera.
Yeah.
Get the camera up or something here. So
Once we get Ash adjusted, then we'll just start. All right.
yeah, great.
I think he cannot hear us at the moment. Ash, can you hear us? No, not yet.
No.
If you lift a bit the camera.
Yeah.
Get the camera up or something here. So
They can hear us. That's all that
Once
matters.
we get Ash adjusted, then we'll just start. All right.
Okay, if you can hear
can
me,
hear you.
I think you cannot hear us at the
fine.
moment.
I see Ursula.
Ash, can you hear us?
I see Governor Dukakis. Hello, Ursula. How wonderful to see you.
Ash, what a pleasure to see you again. Oh, this is so good. So good. So many memories immediately. How are you doing?
You're just going to have to signal me. For some reason, your software and mine are not compatible. Just signal me when you want me to start and say wonderful things about Ursula.
Okay. Should we start?
yep. We still got to get.
Well,
we got to
welcome.
get Ash into the picture here somehow. We're still cutting his head off.
Okay. Somebody signal me when you want me to kick this off.
We want to kick it off if we can just drop Ash down a little bit somehow. Okay. So let's begin.
Welcome and good morning. I'm Tom Patterson, one of the co-founders of the Boston Global Forum. It was on this day 8 years ago that Mike Dukakis, John Quelch, Nguyen Antoine, and I founded the Boston Global Forum. And every year since, we've marked December 12th with a conference and new initiatives. The 2015 conference, for example, marked the announcement and creation of Global Cybersecurity Day, a conference at which we recognized and honored UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. 2 years later, this conference marked the formation of AI World Society, which you'll hear more about today. We were honored then by the presence of President Toomas Hendrik Ilves of Estonia, who led that country's pioneering use of blockchain technology to build a digital society. And December 12th is when we present our annual World Leader for Peace and Security Award. This year's recipient, Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, is joining us today. A special welcome to her and also to my Harvard Kennedy School colleague, Ash Carter, who was the U.S. Secretary of Defense in the Obama administration. Before introducing Boston Global Forum's chairman, Mike Dukakis, I want to say a word of thanks to Tuan, who, as those associated with this organization know, is its driving force. Tuan is our organizer, our networker, and our leading thinker. Many of the initiatives that have marked the Boston Global Forum's work these 8 years come from dedication. Here, Tuan, I want to thank you for all that you do for the Boston Global Forum. Mike Dukakis, our chairman, has been part of the Boston Global Forum since its founding and has guided not only our December 12th conferences, but the others we hold each year. Mike was 3 times elected as governor of Massachusetts, was chosen in 1988 as the Democratic Party's presidential nominee, and currently holds 2 faculty positions, one at Northeastern University here in Boston, and one at the University of California, Los Angeles, where, to the envy of the rest of us, he teaches during the winter months. Mike, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Tom. A pleasure to be with all of you. I have to correct Tom in one respect. I had a difficult spring on the health side out in Los Angeles with pneumonia and complications. Came back and decided, especially given the pandemic, that it was a good time to formally retire. So as of the 30th of June, I retired from active teaching. I'll still maintain a relationship with Northeastern. I don't think, Tom, I'll be going back out to Los Angeles again. So you're going to have to
I
put up.
cannot hear you, but I can. I'm receiving a text.
Really?
So I know I'm following the program, Mike.
Okay, sorry about
Tell
that.
me when.
Anyway, So I'm going to be with you for better or for worse all year, not just 9 months. But I want to underscore Tom's remarks about Tuan. He's been the driving force behind this institution for the last 8 years, and we all value his leadership and his commitment and his energy. And without him, we wouldn't be here. So our thanks to him. And I want to begin by welcoming the President of the European Union. I will introduce her for an award in a few minutes. But particularly pleased to be able to introduce our keynote speaker, Ash Carter. I haven't spent as much time with him as I would like, and I hope I will have an opportunity to do that. But I'm an admirer from afar, and Ash, it's a great pleasure to have you with us. And I think most people know what you've done and how you've done it. The former Secretary of Defense, Ash Carter, who I hope will be playing important roles now that we've got some leadership back, or soon to be back, in the White House that we can all work with. So without further ado, Ash, welcome. Great to have
Thank
you
you
with
all
us.
so much. Governor, I appreciate it. What a wonderful opportunity to honor my good friend and a towering leader in peace and security, and also the important connection of those to technology, Ursula von der Leyen. I got to know Ursula very well when she was the defense minister of Germany, and I was the defense minister of the United States. And in everything we did together, we began from the common pedestal of Western values. And it's worth saying something about Western values. These are the values that arose in the Enlightenment and that are encapsulated in the phrase dignity of man, what we now say is the dignity of people. And that is the pedestal from which we departed on all of the important missions that we shared as defense secretaries. We were, first of all, in those days, rebuilding NATO and reorienting it to the future. No more important alliance, an alliance that reflects those values. And we applied those values in Afghanistan, in Iraq, where it was Ursula and I and a very small knot of defense ministers who, in a very sensitive and rapid manner, put together the campaign to destroy ISIS, which needed to be done and which was done. A short time after I left office, Ursula got to see the final victory, but we knew it was inevitable by the time I left, and thanks to that plan. We also had the refugee crises in Europe from not only Syria, but also Libya as well. She and I dealt with that together. And on the Eastern Front, the looming threat from Russia. Little more distant at that time was China. And China presents a puzzle because China is a great culture with which we trade. And so there can be no question of a complete separation. Yet, Chinese values are not the values of man or people. They are the values of China and being Chinese, which is fine, except if you're not Chinese. And so building a bridge of values between us, our community of nations and values, and that value stream, while continuing to keep peace and commerce, is the challenge of our time. And Ursula is deeply involved in that. You may know me as Secretary of Defense. You probably don't know that I'm also a physicist. And as a physicist, I actually know quite a great deal about AI. And in fact, I've been using the phrase for 4 decades now to describe something which is more mundane than most people think, certainly more interpretable and penetrable than most people think. And that's an important thought because machine assisted human intelligence is going to be part of our future. And the question is, how do you situate that assistance in values? Let me give you an example. When I was Secretary of Defense and Ursula with me, let's suppose that we conducted an airstrike one night. This kind of thing happened, and inadvertently, women and children were swept up into the violence. I always imagined when I thought about AI, suppose I went out the morning after that to the press and said this was a terrible mistake, but the machine did it. It was an artificial intelligence mistake. Would that be accepted? Should that be accepted? And of course, it wouldn't be, and it shouldn't be. And I would have been crucified, and my colleagues like Ursula would have been crucified for making that kind of excuse as well. And what that tells us is that in missions or applications of AI that are grave, like national security, and especially where it involves the application of lethal force, or law enforcement, or the provision of healthcare, you can't have the standards of the people who sell advertising. They can afford to make errors. What's the big deal if you pitch an ad to someone and they don't buy the product, or they buy the product and you never pitch the ad? The two kinds of errors that you can make, no consequence. And the fact that the internet era was born in essentially the advertising industry engendered a kind of amorality in the application of technology that we are just in the process of correcting. Nowhere has that correction been pioneered more than in Ursula von der Leyen's Europe. I could give you many examples, Governor. We don't have the time for that. But I just wanted to say that among all her other accomplishments in national security and in the governance of Europe and being a bright beacon for values in our world as a whole, she has been in the field of your particular discussion today of artificial intelligence. So Ursula, for this and so many things you've done for our country, you deserve this award. I believe that my country, under President Biden, I've known him for decades, will rejoin you at your side. I thank you for keeping the flames of Western values burning brightly in our common and shared civilization. I'm glad to share this planet with you. I'm very, very glad to call you my friend.
Thank you, Ash, very, very much. Thank you very much. I have to say, in commenting on your field and the fact that you're a physicist, that I'm in politics because of physics. I was a pretty bright kid in high school. Went to Swarthmore College, which I'd never heard of before I went down there. And having done well in chemistry and chemistry and biology, I decided I'd kind of start my undergraduate career with physics. I couldn't get it. I didn't understand it. I had a very sympathetic professor. I got a charitable D and decided to go into politics instead. And if it hadn't been for physics, I guess maybe I had never gone into politics. So an interesting story, and one that reminds us that we're all fallible. And when it comes to physics, I'm fallible. Anyway, thank you for joining us, and thank you for being who you are and the work that you've done. And I hope that you will be able to help Joe Biden and his administration get us back on track. And your experience and the work that you've done will be an important part of that. So thank you so much for being part of this, and thank you for being who you are. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce our honoree, and I have some prepared remarks, Ursula, which I have been told I must read, so I will do so. But let me begin by saying just what a pleasure it is to have you with us and to be able to do this. I'm pleased to announce that this year's recipient of the Boston Global Forum's World Leadership for Peace and Security Award is Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission. President von der Leyen is the first woman to serve in that position. Trained as a physician, she entered politics as a cabinet minister in the German state of Lower Saxony. When Angela Merkel became German chancellor in 2005, she appointed Dr. von der Leyen as Minister of Family Affairs and Youth, a portfolio that aligned with her work on women's health. After 4 years in that position, she was appointed by the Chancellor to be Minister of Labor and Social Affairs. And then in 2013, she was appointed Germany's Minister of Defense, the first woman ever to hold that top ministerial position. When she left her post in 2019 to become President of the European Commission, President von der Leyen had the distinction of being the longest-serving minister in the Merkel government. During much of this period, she also served as deputy leader of Germany's governing party, the Christian Democrats. President von der Leyen has been a tireless advocate for a more united Europe and a Europe that will assume a larger role in international diplomacy and security. A champion of democratic rights and institutions, she contested the emergence in Europe of right-wing nationalism and state authoritarianism. She has pressed European countries to act collectively rather than individually to contain the COVID-19 threat. She is committed to the Transatlantic Alliance, recognizing the collective responsibility of the EU and the United States to advance global peace, security, and development. These goals match those of the Boston Global Forum. We are also at one with President von der Leyen on the need for an international accord on the use of artificial intelligence based on shared values and democratic traditions, an accord that will require sustained transatlantic leadership if it is to be realized. For these and many other reasons, the Boston Global Forum is pleased today to present our World Leader for Peace and Security Award to European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Congratulations and welcome. We're proud of you, and we're pleased to be able to present this award to you today.
Yes.
And there it is.
An order we will send to President. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear Governor Dukakis. My dear friend Ash, thank you very much for your incredibly friendly words. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed such an honor to be here with you today and to be with you at the Michael Dukakis Institute for Leadership and Innovation. You are indeed at the forefront of research and debate, as you could see with a glimpse what you have just been showing. And you definitely work on some of the world's most pressing issues. So I know that you drive the discussion on digital policy and how a human-centric approach on AI could look like. And this is an issue whose importance simply cannot be overestimated. So today I would like to speak about our European perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, I am a tech optimist. I believe that science and technology have the power to improve our lives. Indeed, when I studied to become a medical doctor, I learned, for example, that of course technology saves lives. And artificial intelligence can help identify cancers that used to go undetected, or take modern robots that can help to perform high precision surgery that used to be too risky just a few years ago. But of course, there is another side, and Ash mentioned it. Some of us are deeply concerned about the role which will be left for human beings in a world run by AI. And others worry about the serious effects that algorithms can have on the health of our democracies. Who's taking the final decisions? Who's steering the flow of information? Who's deciding on rules? The world that we see through social media platforms seems real, but of course it is constructed. For example, a list of search results seems objective, but it is different for each and every one of us. Your Google is not my Google. It's steered by algorithms. Thousands of likes and retweets create a sense of unity, while we literally live in different worlds. And yes, algorithms can be a danger to our democracy, but they don't have to be. We have the power to protect ourselves. And this is why next week the European Commission will present its Digital Services Act to make sure that platforms are transparent about the way algorithms work and that they take responsibility for their systemic effects. I think we cannot leave decisions which have a huge impact on our democracies to systems which are a black box for us. There must be at least transparency on how the algorithm works. AI can have profound impacts on the life of the individual. AI may influence who to recruit for a certain post, for example, or whether to grant a certain pension application. For people to accept a role for AI in such decisions, they must be comprehensible. And they must respect people's legal rights, just like any human decision maker must. And this is why we have to be able to examine the workings of the system and to ensure human oversight. Our aim is to create an AI ecosystem of trust. This is our European way of dealing with AI. Yes, Europe embraces innovation and entrepreneurship. And yes, we are eager to explore the full potential of AI, for example, for our industry and services, the health sector. But we will never lose sight of those who are meant to benefit from these technological wonders, our citizens, our people. What sets Europe apart from competitors like China is not the size of our tech sector or how attractive we are for venture capital. What sets Europe apart from competitors is the fact that our values come first. Human beings come first. And dear Governor Dukakis, dear friend Ash, ladies and gentlemen, I am so honored to receive this award today. For me, this is also a very personal starting point for a great new beginning between the United States and Europe. A partnership that has been tested time and again. A partnership that today is needed more than ever, not at least in the digital world. The way we approach algorithms and AI will define the world we live in. And this is why the European Union proposes to start work on a transatlantic AI agreement. We want to set a blueprint for regional and global standards aligned with our values, human rights and pluralism, inclusion, and the protection of privacy. A transatlantic dialogue on the responsibility of online platforms. Together, we could set the blueprint for other democracies facing the same challenges, to make sure that algorithms and AI are a force for good. Once again, I'm delighted to be with you today. I'm deeply honored by this award. Thank you very much for that. And thank you very much for having me with you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's good to have us with you. We look forward to working very closely with you and with Europe and the world itself to make this a technology that works for us and not against us. And we're pleased and honored to have you and to be able to honor you. We do have a special guest, Representative Robin Kelly, who wants to say a few words of congratulations to you. Is she out there?
Video.
Robin?
Video.
Hello, and thank you for allowing me brief remarks. Since 2015, the Michael Dukakis Institute has done great work promoting leadership and ethical. I was also delighted to learn about the formation of the Center for AI and Digital Policy because we need more people working out these hard problems around emerging technologies. Their work on the AI Social Contract Index is an informative and useful study that will help frame the global debate over AI moving forward. I also want to congratulate President von der Leyen and all of the work that the EU has done around AI policy based on democratic values. I'm confident that in the coming years, EU-US relations will only grow stronger under your leadership and partnership with President Biden. While the US and Europe may take different approaches to privacy and regulating emerging technologies, our shared values and open democratic societies unite us. New technologies present new challenges and opportunities, none more so than artificial intelligence. For over a year, I've been working with Republican Congressman Will Hurd and the Bipartisan Policy Center to push for a U.S. national strategy on artificial intelligence. President Obama and Trump have taken steps in the right direction, but Congress also ought to have a say in how the federal government approaches artificial intelligence. We brought together experts from government, the private sector, and civil society to publish 4 white papers on artificial intelligence. They focused on AI and national security, AI in ethics and bias, AI in the workforce, and AI in research and development. We then took our top priorities and introduced a resolution to help guide the U.S.'s national strategy for artificial intelligence. I'm happy to say that this bill passed the House of Representatives unanimously on December 8th and clearly articulates Congress's priorities for artificial intelligence. One of the key takeaways was that there's no need for the U.S. to go it alone. To ensure that countries like China and Russia do not write the rules of the road, it'll be essential for the U.S. and like-minded countries and bodies like the EU to work together, guided by our values. Together, we must develop and exercise new plans and operational concepts for AI-enabled capabilities and systems, promote the interoperability of military platforms and decision-making procedures, pool resources for cloud computing, best practices for sharing non-sensitive data sets, and develop common standards for test, evaluation, verification, and validation. I know that the path will not be straight or always easy, but I'm an optimist. I know that we are better when we work together and that more unites us than divides. In the end, it is our duty as leaders to build trust around AI and give people faith that this technology will be a force for good in the world. The work is not done just because we passed a resolution. Investments in R&D and national security will be essential to increasing innovation and ensuring that bias and the chance for unintended consequences are reduced. Our workforce must be prepared to adapt, and our education system must prepare students for an AI-driven economy. Governments must rise to meet this challenge with a plan that will benefit all of society. With the rate of innovation around the world, it is only a matter of time before the power of AI reaches all communities and industries. I hope everyone stays safe during the holiday season and that the bond between all democratic nations and the U.S. continues to grow. Thank you.
Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Mark Rotenberg, and I'm the director of the Center for AI and Digital Policy at the Michael Dukakis Institute. I wanted to give a special thanks to Governor Dukakis and to Juan for helping us establish this new center. Our aim is to promote AI and digital policies that advance democratic values. And we've spent actually the last several months undertaking the first attempt to explore the use of AI technologies as measured against democratic values. A remarkable group of people came together on this project. We had more than 20 researchers in a dozen countries to help examine and evaluate the AI policies and practices. And we have just this morning posted our new report, Artificial Intelligence and Democratic Values, the AI Social Contract Index 2020. And you'll find this at our website. You're able to download the report. I also wanted to briefly highlight this remarkable team that has worked on the project and give a special thanks to Anne Carr-Blanc, formerly with the OECD, who played really a key role in helping us work through the methodology and the analysis and the production of the final text. But the whole team on this project has been just fantastic. And I want to, again, thank everyone for their participation. I'm going to jump right into a quick overview of the report and then turn to our expert panel to launch our conversation. This is the summary. The full report is available online. We believe the report is significant for several reasons. First of all, as many of you know, there's been a lot of work in the last few years on AI policies and AI ethics, but this is actually the first attempt to provide a comparative study of national policies based on common metrics. And by taking this approach, we were able to produce numeric evaluations and then to rank countries. Of course, the question you may ask, well, what is the basis for those evaluations and rankings? And the quick answer is that we've used global norms for AI policy and for human rights. We had 12 metrics across 30 countries. We took the top 25 countries by GDP and 5 other countries that we thought were significant. We grouped them into 5 tiers. It's a very substantial report. Although it came together in just a few months, it's over 100,000 words and 1,000 footnotes, and no doubt will increase over time. Among the key findings, we certainly saw the influence of the OECD G20 AI guidelines or principles. More than 50 countries at this point have now committed to that policy framework, and we think that's significant. In the area of policy safeguards, we noted a close connection between the laws of data protection and the emerging laws surrounding artificial intelligence. Key terms arise in both domains. such as fairness, accountability, and transparency. We were very interested in the debate over red lines. And if you follow the AI policy debate, you will see that many civil society organizations are pushing to establish certain prohibitions on facial surveillance in public spaces or schools, prohibitions on the use of AI in criminal justice or the scoring of citizens. And so we wrote a bit about that. We're also aware that this is in the early days. AI research goes back to a summer conference at Dartmouth in the 1950s. But it's really only in the last few years that national governments have begun to talk explicitly about policy regulation for artificial intelligence. The other key point is that the process is accelerating. So we see more discussion more rapidly around what countries should do. So here are some of the key findings. As I said, we set out to evaluate and rank and group countries. We put Germany in tier 1 because of its robust safeguards, its leadership on this issue, particularly among the European institutions, high levels of public participation in the policy formation, and a strong data protection infrastructure. In the second tier were several countries that have been leaders on AI policy, promoting new regulatory approaches, engaging the public. Canada and France, for example, also launched the Global Partnership on AI, which is a new initiative to give more support to the OECD AI principles. Regarding the United States, we noted significant leadership in the White House, as did Congresswoman Kelly, under both the Obama and the Trump administrations. And there are important executive orders that set out a vision of democratic values as applied to AI. But as to the policy process and the public engagement, as well as the absence of a comprehensive privacy law, we saw these as weaknesses as new AI policy challenges emerged. And so the US ended up in tier 3. In tier 4 is China, particularly because of the deployment of AI techniques for tracking minorities and the use against political opponents. We see those as concrete actions that are widely viewed with concern. And, we hope, of course, that country practices will change over time and that we would see some of the countries such as China that have the lower rankings in the year 2020 will improve their national practices and receive a higher ranking in the future. There are 5 recommendations here. We talk about the need to establish national policies that implement democratic values. We emphasize public participation. We look for independent means of oversight for AI systems. That is a key attribute, we believe, in democratic societies. Again, the key words fairness, accountability, and transparency are important. We also emphasize that governments themselves are purchasing and deploying these systems, and they have a particular obligation to uphold these principles in the administration of public services. And finally, we join with civil society groups on one red line issue, and that is the issue of the use of facial recognition for mass surveillance. Briefly, our future plans: we will spend the next several months disseminating this report to key decision makers. We will continue to promote democratic values. Over the course of the next year, we will be updating and monitoring country policies and practices. And we plan to present an updated report a year from today with new findings. And if we have improvement by countries, that's great, and we will record that. But if there are emerging problems, we will note those as well and explore them. So we hope with this report to begin to launch a conversation about how we measure the implementation of democratic values with the deployment of AI systems. Now it's my great pleasure and honor to welcome our panelists. We've put together an extraordinary group, and I want to thank them each personally for taking the time to be with us today. for this discussion. Karen Kornblue, who I've known for a number of years, is the former U.S. ambassador to the OECD, and we're grateful for your participation, Karen. Wong Ki-moon is the president of SUNY Korea. He was the leader and champion at the OECD on the development and articulation of the OECD AI principles, which remain the most influential global framework. Thank you, Wonky, for joining us. Merv Hycock is the founder of the AI Ethicist, one of the top 100 women in AI, and has been a very influential force in the discussion about AI policy. And finally, my good friend, Professor Frank Pasquale, who's been just an intellectual leader in the field for many years. It was actually his early work on algorithmic transparency that inspired many of our subsequent projects. Frank has published 2 books now, one on the Black Box Society and the other on the laws of robotics. I would strongly recommend both. They're available, by the way, online through the Center for AI and Digital Policy. So thank you for being with us, Frank. I think I'm going to go first to Karen, who knows quite a bit about the role of the OECD in global policy, and that the German Marshall Fund has launched her own project on digital innovation. For your assessment of the report and the issues, and what you think the next steps might be for democratic governments.
Thanks so much. Mark. Congratulations on this incredible report, and thank you for including me with this august group of people who I've learned so much from. Governor Dukakis, I was an intern when I was at the Kennedy School studying with Ash Carter, but I was moonlighting as an intern doing technology policy on your presidential campaign. And at that time, Japan was the big threat. And we were starting down a path of deregulation in the United States that we now think of as neoliberalism, where we thought the market could solve all problems. And that gradually became this, with the increasing rise of digital technologies, a sort of internet or technology utopianism, that not only could the market solve problems, but the design of the internet per se was going to bring democracy and voice to the voiceless. And I think perhaps we're waking up from that slumber. I hope so. And I think Europe, where the US, I think, led in a lot of international approaches to technology, we led at the OECD with the idea of intermediary limited liability that led to the e-commerce guidelines at the OECD. We led on privacy guidelines at the OECD. When I was ambassador, we created some internet policy-making principles that said we needed to respect certain values across countries. But the U.S. has stepped back from that leadership role. And into that leadership role have come Europe, which led with the GDPR, which has influenced our privacy landscape immeasurably, Canada, Japan, the G20, and the OECD is playing an incredibly important role, which I'm so thrilled by. So I'm so glad that you're taking what it's doing, what the OECD is doing, and you're giving it life, and you're acknowledging that while we may all have radically different legal contexts, there are certain values, certain processes, certain approaches that we need to have within each country, and that we need to have in order to have some kind of interoperable system that will make some sense of this digital world and bring democracy to the forefront, not leave the regulation of these technologies to private companies and their commercial motives. They need some guardrails before the technology gets further out of the box. So I think this is incredibly important, and I'm really grateful to you and to the OECD for the work you're doing.
Thank you, Karen. Wonky, perhaps you could say a bit about the evolution of the OECD AI principles and your assessment of the report and next steps for democratic nations.
Thank you, Mark. I should congratulate President von der Leyen for this receiving the award. And I think this is in this report, let me first mention about the report itself. I think it is not a coincidence that Germany is ranked as #1, because when I was working at the Korean government and led the drafting of our AI strategy, we actually studied all national AI strategies across the world. And we found that the Germany's AI national strategy was the most comprehensive one. And it was not just a declaration of the AI policy directions. It has a kind of implementation tools within that strategy. So that was a kind of unique strategy we found among many AI strategies across the world. I think I was quite lucky to join this work of the OECD AI principles as chair of the OECD Digital Economy Policy Committee and the AI Experts Group. I led both groups. And when we actually made that recommendation, there were a lot of discussions, not just among the governments. We invited experts and civil society and the companies. And this kind of multi-stakeholder approach is essential to implement democratic values in terms of the AI, use of AI applications. Even though we have good rules and regulations and good policies in AI, if we could not actually encompass this civil society, especially the industry itself, it would be very difficult to implement these principles into reality. So, in a way to move forward, it is very important to monitor the situation and to engage with the whole stakeholders in this AI field. In this respect, I think there is a value on this report, because whenever we actually give length on something, the government actually care about that. And at this point, I'm not quite sure we have quite sophisticated and objective ranking method, which I hope that we could harness that over the time. But anyway, if we rank countries and let them know that where they stand, then government look at the document and try to improve their system. And hopefully in the future. At this first publication, we actually focus more about whether they have a framework. In the future, I think it would be more important for us to focus more about how they implement the principles in real economy and society. And if we can actually develop methodology and key performance indicator, which could be acceptable by everybody, I think this report will make a significant impact on the landscape of AI. I'll start here.
Great. Thank you, Walkie. And you make a very important point. We've spent quite a lot of time developing the methodology for the report. And of course, we recognize there's some degree of subjectivity in almost any survey enterprise. But the key issue which you pointed to, which I think is the real challenge in this field, is the difference between what countries say and what countries do. Countries may, in fact, have very good policies, but it takes quite a bit of work to determine if they are implementing the policies they have established. Even the OECD, I think, has recognized that in articulating its framework for AI, it's still very difficult to assess the progress that particular countries are making. And that's remarkable because, of course, the OECD's expertise is measurement and comparative study. So we have a challenge ahead, as do others, and we will take on board suggestions for our next edition. I'd like to turn now to Merva, who, as I said, has done a great deal of work, not only in support of this project, but more broadly in the field of AI ethics, for your views on the role of democratic values and steps going forward.
Thank you, Mark. It was an absolute honor to be part of the research team with some amazing names. I did learn a lot. And again, an honor to be here today. Just to reiterate what Wonky said and what you mentioned, measuring endorsement throughout the study was an easy task. the measuring the implementation piece was a whole different thing. And we do want to make sure that that gap is closed going forward, both in our research as well as the activities that governments, or like the steps the governments are taking. When we were researching the actual practices at each country, there was a striking number of countries committing themselves to supporting rule of law, respect for fundamental rights, fairness, accountability, and transparency, while at the same time suggesting that they are also committing themselves to test bedding AI technologies, sharing data with private entities, etc. And I think our recommendations are a good reflection of our concerns around that, whether it is the countries must commit themselves in development, procurement, and implementation of these systems in public services, whether it is around guaranteeing the transparency and accountability of the systems. As President von der Leyen also suggested, I think for us the next steps are around human-centric AI. What does the implementation on a country level look like for the health of the democracy? And how can NGOs, nonprofits, trusted third parties can work with the government to build that ecosystem of trust, and how our work can support that, both from the government capacity building side, as well as standing as the NGOs and independent parties supporting that work.
That's great. Thank you. And before I turn to Frank, I just want to say we do have a bit of time for questions. If you would like to propose a question for the panelists, please type into the chat, and we can read from the chat and direct your questions to the panelists. And if I got any of that wrong, I hope someone will correct me. Okay, Frank, you've been at this for a long time, studied deeply policies and practices, particularly I would say among private entities, and here we are looking at what governments say and what they do. What is your take on all of this?
Thanks so much, Mark. And I think what I was particularly very happy to see in the report was the wide breadth of countries considered. Because I think that there are many, as someone who's now a series editor for some work at Oxford University Press on the future of law and technology, one of the things that I'm really trying to think about is how do we bring more voices into the conversation? And so therefore, whatever the conclusions are about the merits or demerits of particular programs, the mere fact of having so broad a perspective that really bests so many of the other reports that I've seen out was very heartening to me. I also think that I was very inspired by Ursula von der Leyen's acceptance speech earlier today, because I think that was just such a powerful statement with respect to fundamental red line demands on the future application and development of AI. And I think that, in terms of demanding transparency, demanding accountability, when these systems affect individuals, that seemed to me perfectly congruent with a lot of the demands within the report for national policies for AI that implements democratic values. And I think that that's something that is really critical to note, that with respect to technology, it's not as if this technology is simply on some track and then that we reactively will react to whatever path it tends to go down. Instead, there is a lot of room for public-spirited leaders to think further ahead and to try to ensure that in areas that affect individuals' rights and liberties and fundamental interests, that we have a requirement for explainable AI as opposed to less accountable, less transparent black box systems. And I think that sort of commitment is going to be very important in terms of future iterations of the report to ensure recommendation 3, that countries guarantee fairness, accountability, and transparency in AI systems. So with that, I just wanted to, those are my initial impressions. Very glad to see the breadth of consideration here. And secondarily, to see the harmony between the announced approach of the European Union end of this approach to AI is terrific to see.
Great. Thank you so much for your comments, Frank. And as I said, we will take questions. If you'd like to ask a question, just please post it to the chat. We might go one more round now, and this is, a difficult question, but obviously one that this report explores. I think we all recognize, as President von der Leyen said at the outset, that there's enormous opportunity with technology, and AI techniques are being used to solve any number of important social issues and medical issues. I've often been fascinated by the amount that AI can do without actually gathering personal data. If you're concerned about privacy, it tends to focus on such concerns as climate change, for example. And so you bring big data analytic tools to large amounts of data that are actually unrelated to people, but directly impact the quality of our lives. So there are many positive roads for AI. But this report at the same time does raise a few flags. And the question I'd like to pose now to our panelists is, from the position of democratic values and democratic institutions, what should we be on the lookout for? What are the deployments that pose the challenges that need to be monitored? And if we need to put in place some red lines or prohibitions, what might they look like? So let me come back to Karen again and take your thoughts on that issue.
Thanks so much, Mark. So one of the things that I want to say first is how important I think it is that this moves beyond the idea of AI ethics. That I think we've allowed this vague term to substitute for some rigor, and I like very much that you're bringing rigor to this discussion. And so what are some things that I think about? I think about how AI can be used to create massive loopholes in our, I hate to say regulatory system, but regulatory system that can eat the whole economy. So, and just as Ash Carter said, he couldn't say, an AI did it when somebody was killed. I think we see companies saying an AI did it when it comes to how workers are treated, getting around the Fair Labor Standards Act, or the AI did it when it came to a hiring decision or a credit decision. And so I think what I'm very concerned about is taking a look at our existing regulations that reflect values, human rights, anti-discrimination, privacy, and updating those rules, giving agencies authorities and capability and capacity and the ability to audit and monitor, so that the AI systems don't become a giant loophole through which all protections are eviscerated. That's what I'm especially focused on. I think what you raised also is AI is very confusing, for even those who are studying it. There's predictive analytics that say on an individual basis, this is the grade you would have gotten if you'd taken that third exam. This is how creditworthy you're going to be based on your past and based on all the data we have on other people. When as we know now, these data sets are so polluted, versus the kind of thing you're talking about in terms of discovering a new drug or dealing with climate change versus mass surveillance. And I think unteasing all of that and having, more nuanced approaches and ability to explain to if we're going to include the public, which I think you're right, we must do, especially in this era, we have to get better at unpacking those different kinds of AI and explaining them to folks.
Those are great points. I think at the outset, you underscore the importance of accountability. And there's always a great concern here about the opacity, the black box nature of the decision making. I think you also referenced the widespread public protests this summer in Britain over the automated scoring of the A levels, which basically replicated the favoritism toward the elite schools as opposed to the actual achievement of the individual students. It was, I think, the first public protest against an AI. So it's very interesting to see that, and I think those points are important. Wanki, what are your thoughts about some of the issues we might be on the lookout for as we think about how AI impacts democratic institutions?
Thank you, Mark. I actually prefer the word human-centric AI over this democratic issue because you can see that I'm the only person to join this poll from the eastern part of the world. And AI is by definition a global issue. So if we just exclude some certain group of people in this discussion, then we could not reach the kind of outcome we desire to have. So we have to use the kind of inclusive kind of terminology which can invite and accommodate all parties in this discussion. This is essential, because unlike other international or global discussions where government can lead the discussion and make certain kinds of agreement and resolutions in the UN level, this is something we should invite all parties. Especially the government do not know what's going on in the field of AI. I have been working for the government for 30 years. I was leading the setting of our national AI strategy as vice minister. But when it comes to the critical point, you have to actually hear from the industry, expert, and academia. And they can do something without the support of the government, without auspice of the government. So if we would like to have this human-centric, trustworthy AI across the world, we have to set up a platform which could actually invite all parties. And we cannot actually set out a kind of certain doctrines on this kind. This is a kind of evolving kind of disciplines and principles over the time based on the advancement of technology. So I think it is very important to be flexible enough to accommodate the changes in the technology and society and to make the best of this technology for the benefit of all humankind. So at this point, we would be very smart enough to select the right word and right methodology to move forward this agenda for the benefit of all humankind. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Wanki. Actually, just thinking for a moment about our own traditions from work at the OECD, people have sometimes thought of the OECD only in terms of the transatlantic relationship between the US and Europe, but that's actually not accurate. The OECD was early on engaged with countries from Asia, and the original privacy guidelines going back 40 years ago included countries from North America and from Europe and from Asia. So I certainly agree on the importance of inclusion and would note even that the Secretary General over the last several years has made a real effort to engage the Global South with the work of the OECD so that it becomes more of a global organization. So this is a very important point to think about how we include everybody in the conversation. To you, Murga, what do we think about, you have a background in ethics, and we tend to think sometimes in, let's say, a micro setting about how systems and people might interact, but at the macro level, we're thinking about how governments make decisions that impact people's lives. So what should we be on the lookout for as we go forward, whether it's democratic values or some other phrase that we think is important to pursue?
I think to the ambassador's points, ethics is one thing, self-governance or soft governance is one thing, but that needs to be complemented with regulation. Without regulation and enforcement of that, we don't stand a chance to have those AI technologies when it's clashing with the private priorities or business models, we don't stand a chance of moving that towards more human-centric products. And I think towards that, we need to widen the lens to remember that the governments act both as the regulators of AI and the user of AI. They are governments are by far the biggest entities that deploy and implement AI in the delivery of public services, defense or intelligence services, etc. So the impact is multifold. When governments are entering into public and private, so public and commercial partnerships, when opening data to commercial entities, or the other way around, when buying data from commercial entities for public use, either from data brokers, etc., we need to ask if that's really in public interest, if it is done in a responsible and ethical way. Will this enhance public's trust towards agencies, public officials, and practices, etc.? So regulation and enforcement of that, and having the public awareness and involvement and civic involvement in that is very crucial, both to keep the governments accountable and having that transparency, because at the end of the day, we need to remember that government's first and foremost responsibility is to protect the individual from harm, to serve the rights of the individual, and to move the welfare forward. So how do we use AI to enhance those, rather than treating consumers or citizens as potential fraud elements or potential surveillance elements? I think for me that's the crucial element in how to move forward and what to look at in terms of the implementation of AI products.
Right. So this is also a very important point. We think about government's role in protecting public safety or public health, and if we have now AI systems that are deployed by government that create some new risks, certainly they need to be assessed and properly understood. Okay, Frank, your thoughts?
Yes, I think that the conversation about I think that your questions began, Mark, about a red line. And I think that there's some really interesting applications there with respect to automated decision-making and the direct application of automated decision-making to individuals. And I think the right to a human in the loop is something that is going to be increasingly important in light of things like the Australian robo-debt scandal. People might be aware of that as sort of automatic application of a very crude and simple algorithm to benefit recipients' past benefits. And I think that, in the aftermath of that, there was a lot of protests, a lot of concerns by lawyers that the method of application of the algorithm did not actually adequately take into account law overall. And I think that that's going to be a really interesting sort of line to draw, the line drawn between computational decisions, scoring, ranking, rating, evaluating persons, and when do we permit a computing system, AI, to simply make those decisions, and when not. And I think that the lesson of robo-debt, the lesson of many of the other scenarios that are described by Virginia Eubanks in her book, Automating Inequality, and an increasing body of work in this area across the world, is that the incredible importance of having a human in the loop to intercede when there are suspicions that these systems have gone awry. And I think that, I see a question in the chat about, turning from reactive to a proactive monitoring of the trustworthiness of AI. One of the things that I've been working on that I think would be something, for future considerations by governments is the idea that the decision-making by these systems is so sensitive that we need to flip the presumption. And we usually now presume that when AI is deployed either in the private or public sector, that it's up to regulators to come in afterwards to sort of evaluate, clean up the mess, et cetera. And I think that in a wide variety of areas, we should flip that presumption and say, instead, one needs a license to apply the AI. And you have to ex ante get clearance to apply it, as opposed to ex post regulation. And certainly that could have stopped a lot of the problems, I think, with robo-debt. And I think it would be very useful in many other areas where we see a proliferation of so-called AI solutions that end up creating more problems than they solve.
That's great, Frank. Those are great points. And they remind me actually that a lot of the current discussion around regulating AI does have roots in privacy law and data protection law, because of course the original concern was the fairness of the automated processing. You can find that language going back to the late 1960s and early 70s. And we're still talking today about the fairness of the automated processing and whether, for example, you need a person in the loop to make a final determination about those decisions that impact individuals. The other point which you made, which is also GDPR relevant, is that the GDPR requires, in some circumstances, data protection impact assessments prior to the establishment of a new system. There's one reading of that article that says, well, that will also apply essentially to AI applications. And there are others who have said that we need independently AI impact assessments prior to the deployment of new systems. So I think you've also made a second key point relevant in the privacy world about how we anticipate problems, assess problems, and frankly design better systems, because the goal in the exercise is not to prevent the application. The goal is to ensure the application does what it's intended to do. So that's something that has to occur in advance, not after the fact. Okay, thank you also for answering the question in the chat. I'm going to throw out a concrete red line that emerged as we were doing our research, but one that we were not fully able to explore. We do in the study look quite a bit at facial recognition, which many of the civil society groups have identified as a practice that needs, in several circumstances, to be prohibited. So there's a lot about that. But I think another area where it might be worth talking about the need for red lines, we would say in the US, the criminal justice system, which more broadly would incorporate predictive policing and criminal sentencing and decisions about probation, all the ways in which rule-based systems do in fact try to provide greater fairness because of the discretion that's afforded to judges and others. There's a genuine concern that we have a tremendous amount of bias in how we treat people who have been charged with criminal acts. And so you have an opportunity here with AI to create a fair, more just system. But you also have companies who understandably say, well, we can help you solve that problem and we can take data and develop an algorithm or technique, but the value of our company will reside in the technique we develop. And if you ask us to make it public and usable by anybody, you know, our company's technique will have no value. So this is a current conflict between the claims of transparency when AI is deployed in the criminal justice world and concerns about the proprietary value of investment. So I thought we might take a couple of moments here to get your views on that issue. And I'll start again with Karen.
Actually, Mark, skip over me and start with someone else, and I'll come back.
Not a problem. Wonky, can I go to you on this?
Okay. I think this is a fundamental issue, and I think we will rely more and more on these AI solutions to make this kind of determination, not just the kind of reading the X-rays or those kind of stuff. It comes to a kind of area where people decide something on people's life, and algorithm now replaces human decision on this important areas. So the reason we use algorithms is more efficient, and some people say is less biased than human, because human makes decisions based on his own bias. But algorithm itself has its algorithmic bias based on who actually designed this algorithm. So it's very important to ensure human in loop in all this kind of decisions. So whenever there is a decision made by the algorithm, there must be a way that human can actually test this algorithm's accountability, the transparency and explainability of this whole system. If that would not be guaranteed, then I think we should be very careful to give the whole autonomy to the algorithmic decision. But there is always a trade-off here. So efficiency versus transparency and fairness versus effectiveness. So how we can divide the things which humans should be involved in, and the area where we can give more kind of the dependency on the algorithmic decision. I think those are the things we could discuss. In most cases, we just pick up the extreme cases, but there are kind of from A to Z kind of cases, and I think if we could build some kind of consensus, what are the areas we could use more of this algorithmic decision, and what are the areas, even though we use algorithmic support, humans should make the final decision, then I think we could actually use that kind of framework to address this kind of situation.
Thank you. Merva, what do you think? Can we have secretive decision-making in the realm of criminal justice?
Absolutely not. And I would kind of expand that not only to criminal justice, but and I know Frank is big on the scoring systems. What we're talking about is actually at the end of the day, looking at an individual, whether it's a citizen or just an individual, and assigning a worth, and who's deciding on what that worth norm should be, and who fits in that, whether it's credit-worthy, hire-worthy, benefit-worthy, or whatever that you're scoring on. You're saying someone is worthy or not. So we need to look at who's making those decisions, what the data is being based on. But the second thing on a societal level is we're saying we're not looking at the root of the issues, the causes of these issues, whether it's criminal justice, welfare systems, etc., and try to solve that, but trying to bring a solution, techno solution, and see, okay, is this person going to commit fraud? Is this person going to commit crime? And trying to predict those rather than actually trying to solve the issue at heart and look at the context and look at the all the contributing factors towards that. So I think for me, the red line is definitely criminal justice and autonomous lethal weapons, as well as bias in recruitment, as well as using the scoring systems across different public services, especially when we have this data brokers where we don't have any input into what they have. We don't have any right to correct, right to delete, and our data are being sold on a daily basis where we don't have control, but all the decisions are being made on that. So I think for me, it starts with that data activity, data brokers or data selling and data collection activity, and how we regulate that and how we make that transparent, and then look at the applications.
Right. And thinking about red lines and predictive policing, I recall the movie with Tom Cruise, Minority Report. I don't know how many people have seen it, but it's actually pretty popular, I would say, in the AI policy world. So we'll need to find some way to include references. We may hide them in the citations in the next edition of the report to Minority Report and the various ways that police may operate in the future. Frank, your thoughts on red lines in criminal justice? Can we allow that in a democratic society to have a determination about an individual and that person not be able to challenge and inspect the basis of that determination?
No, and I think that Rebecca Waxman's work at Berkeley is really fantastic here in terms of saying that we can't have a situation where trade secret protected algorithms are used in ways that cannot be challenged by defense counsel, because otherwise you give away the store. Essentially what ends up happening is you end up having very complex algorithms that can be pointed to in sort of the commercial. You have an unholy marriage of state secrecy and trade secrecy. And so therefore, as soon as you enter into the criminal justice system, I have no tolerance for it. And I think that there should be no sort of economic argument for the secrecy of these systems. And that goes up to and including if someone were to develop an AI that they said was that they could demonstrate across a number of statistical scenarios would be better than persons. I think still, nevertheless, we have fundamental legal process values that are at stake there. And so, therefore, I think that we have to be extremely suspicious of these sorts of systems when they start creeping into the criminal justice system, and that the commercial imperatives need to be sort of set aside for public values.
Can I push you just a little bit on this point? Because, as you know, this is a lively debate right now, and just adopting the role of the advocate for these new systems. They would say there is currently in the criminal justice system, particularly in the U.S., tremendous bias. People get disproportionate sentences based on race, based on age. And if the person can establish by scientific means with outcome data that would prove to you that a new AI system would produce outcomes that are fair and then presumably more just. And the only trade-off here is that you would not get to open the box, but you would see outcome data on an ongoing basis that produces a better result for a justice system. Would you be prepared to consider that scenario?
No, I wouldn't, because actually, I think that the issue here is we've already had some movement here by some foundations that are very much into algorithmic decision making. And by the way, I put this in the topic of algorithmic decision making. I situate in a larger trajectory that Nancy MacLean talks about in her Democracy in Chains. Sort of the same people that were sort of behind a lot of law and economics displacing democratic and human decision makers, or democratic decision making, are now sort of moving to algorithms. And I think that there's push there to say, hey, we've got a new algorithm, and it turns out that less minorities are affected, or that our impact on minorities is better. Okay, so I think this is already part of the literature with respect to one of the algorithms. My response to that would be to say, if you want to ensure that there's not a disparate impact, then write into law that there is no disparate impact. Okay, it's not that we should have algorithmic shortcuts that say, oh, at the price of totally not understanding the system and outsourcing its logic to a private corporation, you do better with respect to whatever the value you're optimizing for, right? I don't accept that. I think that essentially, if you want to have a value that if you want to have those sort of values in the system, which I completely agree with, I think that the U.S. justice system is tremendously biased and has an extraordinary record of racial discrimination that must be addressed. But I don't see, but if the trade-off that's presented is, let's give us this black box algorithmic system, we'll make a marginal improvement to how things are going, in exchange for giving away the rule of law values that allow for the inspectability and understandability of how processes of blame allocation have gone. I won't accept that. I think that there are much more direct ways of doing that, and so therefore, but I do think there will be increasing pressure in exactly this area. There's going to be increasing pressure to push for these types of systems with the idea that you can make there's marginal performance energy behind them. You saw a similar, I think you could make a very similar type of policy analog to those that were trying to say, we will diminish the impact of the carceral state on those with low socioeconomic status, just to get rid of all white collar crime as well. And so to me, it's like that's another trade-off that I think is not necessarily we should force our way into, or that we should be forced into, because I think that there are many much more straightforward ways to address bias and other problems in the criminal justice system than to essentially outsource much decision making to a black box.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you also for the thoughtful answer. I do think sometimes in looking at proposals for red lines, we can understand and certainly perhaps agree with the reasons for prohibition, But I think we also need to understand what the arguments on the other side are, whether it's, fairness or public safety or national security. Oftentimes there are going to be, as the academics might say, strong claims made. And then we need the ability to really take those apart a bit and try to decide if, in fact, they're persuasive. So this is an important process. We actually plan to do more of this in the next edition of the report. So finally, to Karen, any concluding thoughts for us? I mean, where do we go from here in our common enterprise, as President von der Leyen suggested, to make AI inclusive and support pluralism and fundamental rights? What are your thoughts?
That's a big question. I think that part of our democratic backsliding in the U.S. is reflected in our looking to AI systems to solve problems that we just need to solve through a better coming to terms with our values, through updating our administrative state so that it makes sense for the digital era and it actually has the capacity to do some of the things that Frank was talking about. So it's I think very concerning that we have these new technologies that could do even more to undermine values when we don't have that capability, at least in the U.S., to match the challenges of the technology. And I think of the early days of the early progressive era, where there was this idea that there were these huge companies, and so we needed to set up, were we going to break them up, or were we going to set up these big agencies that were going to regulate them? And we did sort of a mixture, but that's how we came up with a lot of these alphabet agencies. I think we need to have a similar kind of not giving up, but how do we make our how do we resolve these conflicts of values, and how do we make sure that we're up to the challenge of the new technology, the new industrial mechanisms? And I think instead of thinking of it as a challenge and throwing up our hands, what you're doing and what everybody on this panel is doing is saying this is an opportunity. Working with Europe, working with the OECD, working with other countries in Asia, as you rightly point out, Frankie, that are thinking about this and coming at it from different angles. What are the models that we can learn from? What are the values that we care about? And then operationally, how do we do it? Where do we set red lines? How do we, make the right inquiries and have the right demands, as Ursula von der Leyen was saying, of the companies and of the systems? And so I think what you're doing is not only important in this one part of technology, it's not only important in terms of the technology plus our privacy, but I think it's very important for the future of democracy or human-centered living. Monkey, let me change that. I think it's very, very important, and I think I hope you'll continue to involve me. I think it's great work and couldn't be more important.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Thank you also, by the way, for the reference to the progressive era, which I actually studied in college. And it's an important time in U.S. history. It was a period of both technological innovation and also the emergence of many new regulatory agencies and new legal frameworks around telecommunications, for example, was important. But even the Federal Trade Commission goes back a little bit more than a century to the rise of new consumer products and new industry. So I think there is a way, picking up on the broader themes of today, what Governor Dukakis has said and what President von der Leyen has said, to see both the advance in technology and its benefit for society, as well as the creation of the appropriate regulations and agencies that make that transition sustainable. So thank you for making that point. And finally, I just wanted to share with everybody, if you are interested in locating our report, I'll quickly go back to the screen and point out, here we are. The URL at the top, I happen to be a big fan of transparency and internet addressing. So I like to show people where things are found online. And you can see the URL for our report and for the center It's CAIDP, the Center for AI and Digital Policy, .dukakis.org. So the materials for today's event, the report, and other materials. Be found there.
I think we might have lost Mark. In terms of the next steps going forward for 2021, I think I'll step in for Mark for a second. We do want to see how this develop, how to provide more objective metrics in terms of scoring the countries, as well as expanding our review in the number of countries, go into a bit more detail. Mark, I see that you're back.
Yes.
I'll pass it back on to you.
Thank you. And I think we turn it over now to Tuan or Tom. Oh, there's Tom. Great. Thank you.
I have the agenda in front of me, Mark, but I think I might be next. Tuan, you can wave me off if that's the case. But in September, the Boston Global Forum partnered with the Club de Madrid to hold a 3-day conference on artificial intelligence. The Club de Madrid, as many of you know, is the organization of former heads of state and government of the world's democracies. Close to a dozen of its members served as speakers or panelists at the conference. Others were there as observers. The conference's topic was the need for a social contract for the digital age, a topic that was guided by the Boston Global Forum's draft of an AI social contract. It lays out basic principles that should govern the use of AI, including people's right to be the primary beneficiary of AI's uses. It places demands on government and tech firms to ensure that right. We've written a conference report that summarizes each of the sessions held during the 3 days. You can obtain a copy of that report on our website, but I'd like to highlight some of the conference's major themes. One was the need to define what the social contract would promote and protect. Much of this discussion centered on basic human rights like privacy and self-determination, but extended also to collective goals like security, safety, transparency, accountability. A second focus was the need for checks on power. AI has the power to transform our lives in positive ways, but also poses clear risks for abuse by governments and tech firms. The risks make imperative the effort to define and secure the social rights, interests, and responsibilities of individuals, as well as those of governments and firms, while also creating codes of conduct for government and firms. The difficulty of enforcing these codes was recognized, particularly for governments that see AI as a means of social control and firms that are intent on manipulating consumer choice. Those concerns pointed to the need for regulatory mechanisms, as well as international accords. International cooperation was stressed at the conference. Like many aspects of the digital age, AI transcends national boundaries. International problems call for international solutions. Transatlantic leadership was deemed critical, given these countries' dedication to human rights, the rule of law, and democracy. At the same time, there was acknowledgement of a need to respect cultural differences, though not to tolerate abusive and oppressive practices. There was a recognition that the work needs to be done so that the benefits of AI are widely shared. Almost half of the world's population is not yet connected to the internet. Digital literacy is low everywhere. Individuals' data is taken without compensation or meaningful consent, and citizens lack a vision of how AI can empower them. Governments and the international community have an affirmative obligation to address these issues. Such efforts would help build the trust necessary to gain acceptance and compliance with the social contract. Trust in the digital space is low at the moment, as is trust generally, affecting even, for example, the response of many people and groups to COVID-19 vaccines. COVID-19, not surprisingly, was a leading topic at the conference, largely around failures in the response. It was noted that these failures included inadequate data sharing, an area where affirmative rules governing AI would have made a difference. I urge you to download and read the conference summary. Members of both the Boston Global Forum and Club de Madrid judge the conference a success and have committed themselves to continuing our partnership. The Club de Madrid has endorsed the Boston Global Forum's social contract for the AI age. You can find a copy of it, along with a copy of the conference proceedings, on our website. Thank you.
Hello? Hello? Thank you very much for the possibility to report here on the achievements during the annual Riga Conference 2020 that was taking place digitally. So we were connected, by Tuan and the Boston Global Forum together to discuss the common challenges that framework nations of the quadrilateral initiative we're facing together, and we were specifically focusing on the challenges and also opportunities proposed by the artificial intelligence. Among the panelists were the chairman of the Boston Global Forum, Governor Dukakis, Defense State Minister of Japan, Yasuhide Nakayama, Chair of the Foreign Affairs, Defense and Trade Reference Committee of Australia, Senator Kimberly Kitching, and Chairman of the National Security Advisory Board of India, Ambassador P.S. Raghavan. And I'm really pleased that together with the Ambassador, I have the possibility to report on some of the findings of the panel that took place on the margins of the annual Riga Conference, where the challenges, especially for the Baltic states, but also the Baltic Sea region, are debated on the annual basis. This report or the panel discussion was something of a new thing in the Baltic states, despite the challenges that we are facing and the challenges that are stemming from the possibilities and also challenges that we as democratic nations face are not new. We know that Estonia was struck by the cyber attack from Russia in 2007, when it wanted to remove the remnants of the communist monuments from its capital and move it to the cemetery. It's like there was a forthwith cyber attack on Estonia. We have been suffering also malign information campaigns, fake news campaigns by Russia. So we have Strategic Communications Center, which is operating from Riga. So there is something that we can share. And those challenges that we are facing in the Baltic states, they are not new. They are actually rather familiar to the framework nations of the Quad, the United States, Japan, Australia, and India. And those nations are, as well as us, trying to keep the international community open to address common challenges in a transparent way. And we would like to see the world open, where the global powers, major powers, are not abusing their might against smaller nations, smaller states, the majority of the number of the international actors. Instead, we would like to see the major actors behaving in a responsible way, not only utilizing the benefits of their international cloud, but also bearing some responsibility of their actions by trying to establish the order in the age of the artificial intelligence that is beneficial to the individual, the human beings, that is beneficial for the human rights and democratic values. That would be the vision and the wishful thinking for the Baltic states at the time when there are so many unknown unknowns that we are facing today. I will just call a couple of examples, and the impact and the benefits of this technology is vast. It can resolve complicated medical problems. It can actually fill in the void, that is left by the negative demographic challenges, for example, for Japan or the Baltic states. We are suffering the decline of the numbers of our societies, and artificial intelligence and automated machines can actually do some good for us. We have been already utilizing the benefits of these digital opportunities. Estonia is one of the pioneering countries in the age of the digital opportunities. Its government is providing sound services, electronic public services to its citizens. And those sound systems, if they are trusted by the society, they can provide substantial benefits for the society. So is Latvia or Lithuania. What is our concern is that we as a small countries, we simply cannot follow those major powers in this technological race. Our brain is not developing as fast as the technology, and technology is surpassing our cognitive capabilities, and we are actually, our inventions in terms of technology, they are allowing machines and automated systems to think for us. And we already heard that, in some states like the United Kingdom, there are already debates about the fairness and transparency of these decisions that are made by the systems. When it comes to the Baltic states, we see the impact of this technological transfer from Indo-Pacific through countries that share common interests, like communist China or revisionist Russia, that is seeking to reestablish all laws to the collapse of the Soviet Union or to the Russian Empire in our nearest neighborhood. And we are very, very much thankful to you that suddenly we don't hear ourselves as a elevator music anymore, that you are also calling Russia revisionist and a challenge, at least not at least in the field of artificial intelligence, but also other fields. We see, for example, less policemen on the streets of Belarus, where systems actually allow the governments, authoritarian governments, to enhance their power by utilizing the facial recognition possibilities to control the society. Those automated systems, they are actually allowing for the authoritarian governments to utilize the assessment of the big data. And those systems, if trained by authoritarian regimes, they can turn detrimental to the democratic societies and individual rights. And this is something as us, as liberal democratic supporters of the liberal, we as a supporters of liberal democratic principles, the Western values, we embrace the US leadership, the European leadership, and all efforts to refute such negative effects of the artificial intelligence and follow all good. And therefore, probably we should look at common framework, and we should immediately work on those common challenges. And this should not be just a strategic initiative. This should be the initiative that is based on a common need. And here in the Baltic states, probably we would be ready to share our experiences and our knowledge, or serve as a platform for the future, which is a recommendation of our report from the Riga conference for future endeavors, like to bring together like-minded countries together in order to craft common rules and principles for the age of the artificial intelligence, which we are entering at rather rapid pace. Thank you very much. I'll stop here and I'll pass the word to Ambassador Raghavan, who is already eagerly looking forward to presenting his views. Thank you very much for the possibility to present.
Hello, Ambassador, please unmute. Yes.
I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I was muted.
Oh, yes. Please repeat again. Read again.
Yes. Let me start again. Good morning, everyone. And let me say what a pleasure and honor it is for me to be here with you this morning for you. I would like to thank, of course, Governor Dukakis and the Institute of Leadership and Innovation, as well as, of course, my friend Tuan, for the opportunity to be here, and also for the opportunity to have participated in the Quad Roundtable at the Riga conference exactly a month ago, I think it was. Of course, it was also a very great pleasure to be able to hear the inspiring speeches that went before, including of Governor Dukakis, of Secretary Carter, and of course the awardee, President von der Leyen. Now, we've heard actually in-depth perspectives on how a human-centric approach to AI should be encouraged, that respects human rights and pluralism. And I'm very impressed by the presentation of the AI Social Contract Index 2020. I look forward to reading it, of course. So from this to the Quad seems to be a bit of a quantum jump of rather large proportions. But I think there are issues of peace and security in both, especially as we look at the way in which 5G technologies will roll out. It's the absolute revolution in high-speed communications and low latency of communications. It will expand the applications of AI into every sector of national economies and every sphere of our day-to-day existence. And then the kind of scope for mischief that, of course, Mr. Shraddhas mentioned in another context, is going to be enormous. I think the alliance of democracies, the alliance of countries that respect human freedoms and human dignity in this area is very important. And that, in fact, is what the Quad is trying to do on threats of a different nature. And therefore, I think I appreciate the initiative that led to the Quad Roundtable at the Riga conference a month ago. As Mr. Shraddhas said, it had very distinguished representatives from the US. Of course, Governor Michael Dukakis was there. And from Japan, the State Minister of Defense, Yasuhide Nakayama. The Australian, from the Australian Senate, the chairperson of the Senate Foreign Affairs, Defense and Trade Committee, Senator Kimberly Kitching. All of them participated, and I had the honor to join them as well. Now, the report itself, I think, is going to be made public. I don't want to really dwell too much of it. But essentially, it recognizes the challenges and the opportunities that the Quad countries face in acting together for what you might call a security architecture in the Indo-Pacific. That sounds a very ambitious title, but essentially what it means is looking for some kind of an equilibrium of interests and aspirations of the people in the region in order to promote respect for sovereignty, independence, peaceful resolution of disputes, free and fair trade, and adherence to international rules in terms of freedom of navigation, freedom of overflight, etc., etc. The Quad itself is an initiative that was started in 2007 at the initiative of the then Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. but then it stuttered. It has restarted in 2017. It's important to understand what the Quad is and what it is not. And that is critical to expanding the scope of its operation. It is not an alliance and is not yet a strategy. As our report says, it is actually a kind of a joint venture of these four countries based on shared interests. The four countries trying to find common grounds for a strategy. And what should that strategy aim for? As I said, the security architecture, which looks at an equilibrium of interests and freedom of operation of countries in that space. Now, we cannot gloss over the fact that the rise of China and the recent Chinese behavior in the region is in fact what has inspired the various regional initiatives, including the Quad. At the same time, the Quad, as we say in our report, should not set itself up to confront or contain China. Every region in that country has a strong economic engagement with China, and China's military dominance in the region, at least today, is quite overwhelming. So I think what the Quad can realistically hope to achieve is to pressurize China to join a dialogue for a cooperative order that tempers its assertive, some might say hegemonistic approach. It is a sort of a move away from a bipolar construct towards a multipolar construct. So if the Quad can dilute some of the rhetoric that has been developed around it and strengthen its strategic resolve, it can enhance broader cooperation in the region, and that's what I think we require to get in countries like Korea, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, very importantly, and countries that recognize that the Indo-Pacific region should be governed by rules and it should respect democratic values. We say that in the report as well. Now, this requires consistency of purpose. I say this because at an earlier period, Quad was somewhat disrupted when there were changes in leadership. We now recognize that there is a change of leadership, an impending change of leadership, and an already implemented change of leadership in two of the Quad countries. The Quad might actually change. There may be a nuance of change in its approach as we go forward, but it still has to maintain its fundamental commitment to seeking democratic approaches to the problems of the Indo-Pacific. And as Mr. Shradhar said, this has application beyond the Indo-Pacific region into Europe as well. These are principles which are applicable to the rest of the world. As I reminded at the conference last month, the China dream is not an Indo-Pacific dream; it's a global dream. And the approaches of China in the Indo-Pacific are in different ways being manifested elsewhere as well. So the idea of a European involvement in the Indo-Pacific initiatives of the Quad is a very important idea. And coming now to the social contract for the AI age, I think this has been very greatly expanded upon in the discussions today. I don't think there is any need for me to emphasize that the Quad, that this is as relevant for the Quad as it is for a larger international community. In fact, at the recent Quad dialogue in Tokyo, our external affairs minister specifically said that we need cooperation among democratic countries on the responsible use of AI. Our Prime Minister said so as well. In fact, our Prime Minister recently addressed a major event for raising awareness on the need to promote responsible AI for social empowerment. And he talked about, President von Leyen mentioned this, the need for algorithm transparency. It is something that our Prime Minister mentioned as well in the event that I talked about. I think I will stop here. If there are points which are raised in a discussion, I'm willing to address them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for my honored guests and speakers. And now I would like to say some words about AWS City, the city of the AI age. First of all, we would like to thank very much for our participation and participants and our college in Boston Global Forum, Michael Dukakis Institute, and our leaders at Governor Michael Dukakis and our college in around the world to support and do with us. And for that, you can see that the Quad Roundtable at Riga Conference 2020. And also every year on December 12, Boston Global Forum have special day, that is the annual conference, December 12. As Tom talked already, and we always try to bring new initiatives, new ideas, new solutions for the world. And this year, you can see so far, we have a lot of new things. We have AI social contract index report from Mark Rutenberg and CAIDP. That is the new center, very high energy and great thinkings and ideas and experts from Michael Dukakis Institute. We have a report at Club de Madrid, World Leadership Alliance, from Tom, present with new initiative. We work with World Leadership Alliance, Club de Madrid, and we have Quad Roundtable report. Officially today, we announced the Quad Roundtable report, and we will do next year that Quad Roundtable for some very exciting initiative. And now I present about AWS City, also a new initiative. So why we have AWS City? Because you can see online is very important, and we spend a lot of time on internet, online, and environment, and ecosystem. But as our speaker talked already, there are a lot of things we need to rebuild, to fix in online, as a Facebook, yes, and the fake news, there are a lot on that. And also we have a lot of problem in cybersecurity. So how we can build a new ecosystem, how to develop a very good environment, online environment for the people live, live and work with highest ability. So we come up with AWS City as a part of AIWS, that AI Society initiative, and we respect and apply principles of the social contract for the AI age. At the Tom Peterson present already, and our people present, and we have big events here in September. This is a very important practical model and environment for the social contract for the AI age. And also, this is a very important initiative solution for United Nations initiative. We call that is the United Nations 2045. We work with UN Academic Impact with my dear friend Ramu Damodaran in UN. And we have a lot of work already to build, and this is one model, very important model for future of the humanity, human being for this. And so what I have a lot of writing for AWS City for today, but I don't want to read. I will deliver my writing for our people. I only brief little bit. That is the AIWS City is the online digital city that bring together the cultural, historical, creative, innovative, and artistic values for humanity. AIWS City is built on the foundation of AI technology and blockchain. AIWS City will bring together world leaders, including thinkers, political leaders, creators, innovators, and educators to help them promote a more civilized and prosperous world, one based on fundamental human values. This is our concept and basic concept. And of course, we are AIWS City. We build on the platform that is the AI technology and blockchain, and we have partner as very important, that is the build of blockchain. And today, this is the first example for our collaboration. That is, we use a platform of build of blockchain to organize this event, special event. You can see that so far. And also thank you so much for build of blockchain. You work very hard and great job for this event. And also we will connect with city center of historical culture, economies, innovation, connect to great university in Boston and top university around the world. And we connect with great thinkers, leaders, and preeminent figures around the world. That is make great environment for people. From that community, we connect together from Boston, New York, Rome, Athens, Paris, and St. Petersburg, and more, mid-March, and Tokyo more. And with this community, we build the society, AI society, with a concept initiative. We try to make AI bring good things for the people, make the people have opportunities. Every people can have opportunity to create values, and we help them exchange values, exchange ideas between innovation, between innovators, and make them can have a very good life and better life with their work and their value. And the second, that is we do with new initiative and pioneering initiative, your AIWS University with AI blockchain platform and pioneering ideas for higher education in the world. This place will very good for the great professors in the world, teach course, and we can help people and advise people learn that are lifelong learning, and they will learn and work with together, and learning, studying by practical, by work, and by support by AI system, make very smart and connect with demand from market, from the world, and from their ability where they have to do. And we have a very special AIWS Palace, that is very honor place to organize events and connect with palaces in the world, as the Versailles, with Windsor, with New Western, and many wonderful palace that is the great values, great treasure of human being. And we develop new things. That means with AI, with blockchain, with digital technology, we build innovative concept platform for us to develop AIWS Palace to host event. As today, we use AI and blockchain platform of blockchain. Do this is the AIWS Palace. That is very historical day. We start to work and practice this platform, that AIWS Palace, and we connect, introduce with many and host many prestigious events in the world. So, and also we have timeline. That is what highlight that we will start officially open AIWS University, AIWS Palace on January 9, 2021. And we will also continue develop home digital home for any AWS city citizen. And we together to build and help them have digital system and to data, to respect them privacy, and can help them develop and make and create values from their data from digital to home, digital home. And this digital home will start to work and provide and serve the people, AIWS city citizen, on September 1, 2021. And also, we are many thanks again, our dear friends, my dear at Boston Global Forum, Michael Dukakis Institute, and Center for AI and Digital Policy, Mark Rutenberg, and his team and our team, and great friend from blockchain for support and great work for these events. Thank you so much, and we hope together we connect that great intellectual, great knowledge, great people we make and to build the world with AIWS AIWS AI Society, as a society with the world we want to do. We want to live, we want with the dream for the great environment. We apply AI, blockchain, a new technology to serve human being, to promote democratic values, to promote dignity value of human being. And thank you so much. Thank from my heart again to my dear friend, and also thank again to Governor Michael Dukakis. Thank you. And Nasli Chukri, please. Now, Nasli.
I'm the last speaker, so I have a moral obligation to be as brief and as clear as I can, which I will. AI is a global technology with global reach. There's no way we can really compartmentalize it. So I will make 3 points and a brief conclusion. The first point is to ask you, to remind you, why do countries enter into agreements? There are really 2 reasons. One is to avoid common aversions, things they don't want. The second is to pursue common interests. These 2 are correct with respect to the democratic countries. They are not with respect to the world as a whole. And if we consider AI as a global technology, which it is, there's some work to be done here. My second point is a question again. What are the dilemmas, the basic dilemmas with respect to AI itself, as opposed to other technologies? One, rapid change, very rapid change. And that rapid change makes it difficult to capture easily the core of what would be part of an agreement. And the next development that is something of a challenge is that we are seeing AI from the point of view of our generations, and at the risk of offending any of you, we are the old folks on the planet, but it's our responsibility to help steer those that will actually, the younger generation that will actually be the beneficiaries or not of any international agreements of the AI that we would try to frame. And then the third point is also a question, but I have an answer to that, and that is, the question is, what is the flaw, the core flaw of all agreements that we have? And I mean that quite seriously. And that flaw has to do with the mechanism that we use, which is word after word, sentence after sentence, chapter after chapter, article after article. By the time you're through reading the entire agreement, you're stuck into a linear logic. You really one cannot understand, despite the best efforts of lawyers who do not think in dynamic terms, what the feedback effects might be on one clause or one article of an agreement if another article of the agreement were implemented. So this linearity is problematic, and in the AI world that is already dynamic, we have to take that into account. Now, I am not suggesting that we should ignore the text version. The text version is essential. But I am suggesting that there are analytics, policy analytics that must be now implemented that we know something about to understand the structure and the content of whatever agreement on AI or on any other subject that we are proposing. This is not a question of algorithm. We discussed algorithm and transparency this morning. This is a question of full understanding of the meaning and the implications of the text version that we would agree upon. So let me give you now my conclusion. I just want to give you an example of what I'm trying to convey, because it's going to be absolutely essential if we are to proceed with working on Global Accord for AI or International Accord, that we understand the flaws and the difficulties of just the linear text. So as an example, I'm going to take the Budapest Convention, the Convention on Cybercrime, which is a European-led. And I just want to show you what it looks like. Oh, here we go. Ta-da! Can you hear me? Yes?
Yep.
This is a visualization of the Convention of Cybercrime. I don't know how many of you really stay up late at night reading the Convention on Cybercrime, but it has some interesting properties that we can never be able to really appreciate if we hadn't seen it in its statistical representation. This is a network view of the clauses. And I just want to point out just 3 features of this one that most certainly was intended by the drafters. But when it comes to the complexity of AI, it's all the more essential that we understand what we're trying to put forward. So the first feature is, you see the stuff in red are individual clauses, articles about the convention, in the convention about what individual countries should be doing. Now, the convention is an important one because there's cohesion among the countries. The United States is a party. And unfortunately, there are only 64 or 69 parties to the convention. But all of the focus of the activities to be done have to do with countries internally or reorganizing themselves. Second feature of the convention that is really interesting and important for the AI future and for our future is what you see in light green or light blue. Those that you see right here or right here or right here. These are linkages from the convention itself, references by the convention to existing international treaties, organizations, agreements, and so forth. So the point here is that this case is building on what the international community has as a whole agreed to be important anchors for security and for stability, irrespective of individual ideologies. This transcends the form of political beliefs or political behaviors. And I don't say that political behaviors and values are not important. They're very, very important, especially when we want to pursue democratic values. What the framers of the Budapest Convention have done is highlight those particular light green ones here, light blue, that really reinforce their values and their attitude approaches towards the convention. And the last thing I would like to point to you is another color. It's the color of purple. This color, are actions that countries can take, should take, for pursuing cooperation. Unfortunately, or fortunately, cooperation in the AI world is an absolute necessity. There is not going to be a dominant power. There will be everyone involved as countries, but also everyone involved that is not a state, not a country, for profit or not for profit. So to conclude, let me just say that we will be worrying about, we were trying to frame the basic principles, word after word, sentence after sentence, chapter after chapter. And even if we all agree, we still have to go through some policy analytics to make sure that the structure yields what we really want that convention to be. There is a major advantage in visualization because you can get the feedback effects from one article to another article, something that you do not get if you're reading linearly. So voila, that's as far as I want to go, and I really appreciate your patience with the last speaker. Thank you.
It's not difficult to do, Nasli. It's a great presentation. It's been a long morning, but a very good one. And on behalf of all of us, I want to say thanks particularly to Ash Carter for joining us, to the President of the European Union, who I hope and expect will be working with closely, and to all of you who have participated in this morning's discussion and have been working closely with us. I want to conclude by simply saying this. Needless to say, this has been a very difficult 4 years for those of us in the United States. We hope that that's over, and that with new leadership beginning on the 20th of January, we're going to have a president and an administration and political leadership that can work closely with the international community and collaboratively with the international community. I'm personally concerned about where we're headed internationally, not just the United States, but the world community. We've got major issues to face out there. One of them is the sheer existence of our planet. And we have great opportunities as well. And I hope all of us will have as good an end of year as possible. And obviously we have a pandemic that we've got to deal with effectively and well as quickly as possible internationally. But I hope we can usher in a new era of genuine collaboration internationally. We don't have time for more Cold Wars. We have serious problems that we're facing and must face and must solve as an international community. And I look forward to working with all of you. We look forward to working with all of you to work on those problems and to see if we can create a world that solves those problems peacefully, effectively, and well. My thanks to everybody, especially to Tuan for his leadership. Look forward to working with you in 2021. Look forward over the course of the next several months to a world which solves this very difficult pandemic problem, can get back on track, and can begin to deal in real terms with institutions like the ones that we've been talking about today, to build a better world, a more responsible world, and a world in which it solves its problems peacefully and without armed conflict. Our best to you all. We've got a lot of work to do to solve our public health problems, obviously, over the course of the next several months. But I'm confident now that we can do that, and we'll be doing it with new leadership here in the United States, which can work effectively with all of you to make this a better world and a better place for humanity. Thanks so much, and look forward to working with you in the coming year. And I think that concludes our meeting, unless somebody has something else they want to say.
No.
Tuan?
Yep, wonderful. That we finished already. You are concluded. That is the finished conference. Thank you so much, my
good luck.
Leader. Mike,
Good luck.
wonderful event. Thank you so much. We have a great event. Thank you for your leadership and meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.